think this is funny?
In a cosmic sort of way, yes.
Well, Mr. Funny Man, is this how you get your sick kicks?
What? It's just an ordinary crabby... Oh my goodness! Squidward!
A few weeks ago, I entered a Monotype tournament my fellow mods were hosting in the VGC Girls and Days Discord server. I had never done much in the ways of custom formats besides Draft or my Mythical Tour, and when my plans got cancelled that day, I decided to hop in last minute and stream it. I tossed together a silly psychic team with little expectations, and we gave it our best shot. Mega Slowbro was the first thing I thought of when building this team. I remembered the silly Slowbro Espathra team I faced in my last video, and I thought that was a strong start for Monotype. Since Slowbro is unaffected by critical hits after a Mega evolves, it was literally impossible to take down one setup with Amnesia and Iron Defense. Body Press gives us the ability to make use of our boosts, and of course Slack Off keeps Bro healthy. Oranguru was added next due to its natural immunity to Fake Out, and the ability to give our Pokemon extra reach with Instruct. Plus, its normal typing giving us at least one Mon that's not scared of Ghost moves. I ran Psychic Terrain with intended utility to go with an Armarouge or Gallade lead, but it didn't come up even once in the tournament. Armarouge and Gallade were both added next as my signature Psyspam staple partners. Gallade helps us answer problematic Dark and Ghost types with Sacred Sword and Night Slash. It also gives us a hard-hitting physical Psychic move in the form of terrain-boosted Psycho Cuts. With two other Pokemon on the team that knew Trick Room, and the potential need for Wide Guard, I opted to go for Wide Guard over Trick Room on Gallade. Armarouge, our favorite spicy boy in armor, gives us a fire immunity should the need arise, and is our main intended expanding force user. Armor Cannon Oko is just about every super effective target and can even put massive dents in them in rain or when they are behind screens. I opted for Energy Ball over other possible coverage or utility moves, and while I didn't use it much, I didn't find myself particularly missing anything else. Meowstic was kept on from my near mono Psychic team, but had its role heavily changed. Psychic Terrain was kept in order to support the ability to spam Expanding Force, but with the addition of the Slowbro setup mode to the team, I wanted to add screens to help keep him safe. This ended up being an excellent choice and mattered throughout the tournament. Fake Out was also replaced with Helping Hand on the expectation of supporting Gardevoir and War with it, but it didn't end up doing anything. I never used it the entire time. Gardevoir was the final last-minute addition to the team. Some friends suggested I'd want at least one faster-ish Mon to not be so heavily reliant on Trick Room, so I went for a standard Protect, Expanding Force, and Hyper Voice, and rounded off the set with Shadow Ball for Ghost coverage. Gardevoir was fine, but probably the weakest link on the team. Some of my friends practiced for the tournament by testing their Monotype teams against each other or against meta teams in preparation. I slapped this together only a few hours before the tournament, and aside from a few small tweaks, I didn't put much detailed thought into it, and I did no testing at all. So, how did we do? Well, I've got the entire tournament ready for you with commentary, so enjoy! On paper, Mystia's team was rather frightening looking. With two reliable Wide Guard users, going for any sort of Psyspam mode was likely out of the question, and with most of her Pokemon resisting Body Press, it was going to be difficult to sweep with Slowbro. I decided that I was more concerned about Wide Guard than I was concerned about the flying typing, and I went for Mega Slowbro. Another reason I felt Slowbro was the call was that her only super effective attack into it was Solar Beam from Mega Charizard Y, which I felt was overall more manageable than all of her threats into Armarouge and Gardevoir. With the intention of entirely focusing on Slowbro and putting every execute in one basket, I gave it my best shot. Mystia leads with Pelipper Gyarados while we lead with Meowstic and Slowbro. We immediately begin our attempts to play defense with Light Screen from River as Gyarados goes for a Dragon Dance. Pelipper Muddy Waters, and thankfully we dodge the accuracy drop on Slowbro and get up an Amnesia. The next turn we reflect to not be scared of the setup snake in front of us, as Mystia repeats her first turn of Dragon Dance and Muddy Water. This time, Meowstic dodges the Muddy Water, but there's an unfortunate accuracy drop on Slowbro.
Damn it, damn it, damn it!
Pelipper is recalled for Corviknight, and we attempt to put a dent in Gyarados with a Helping Hand Body Press. Sadly, after Gyarados Earthquakes, we miss Body Press.
Oh, God!
Meowstic helping hand Slowbro again before going down to Earthquake, and Corviknight begins to try matching our setup. This time our Body Press hits, but because we're only +2 on defense, it merely does about half to Gyarados. We send out Oranguru, who is surprisingly able to take a +2 waterfall from Gyarados in the rain thanks to Reflect. Is Gyarados a fraud, perhaps? Corviknight hits me with its own Body Press, but still doesn't finish off Dr. Banjo. I go for a second Iron Defense, followed by a Trick Room, so we can take control of the board state. On the first turn of Trick Room, I set up some more, then take out Gyarados with a Foul Play, punishing it for its setup. Core Brave Birds Oranguru, but still does very little, even Reflect on. Pelipper comes back out, and anticipating another special attacker in the back, we opt to use Amnesia and Instruct to max out Slowbro's special defense. Pelipper finishes off Oranguru with Muddy Water, but he's done his job excellently, so it's okay. Corviknight continues to try and match my setup. I send out our beloved Spicy Bro as my last Pokemon, who was brought for Wide Guard and Armor Cannon. We Body Press Pelipper and discover that it is slower than Armarouge and manages to get off of Muddy Water. Thankfully, Armarouge lives and manages to smack it back with an Energy Ball, guaranteeing that the next hit will take out the bird. I didn't want my opponent getting a free switch this turn, hence the Energy Ball instead of Expanding Force. Corviknight continues to set up with Iron Defense. On the next turn, Slowbro finishes off Pelipper, while Armarouge gets in an Armor Cannon, dealing half even in the rain. Sadly, that bird we hate just heals it off. Mistia sends out Dragonite and immediately Megas and Hurricanes our poor Armarouge. After which Corviknight tickles Slowbro a little more before we heal with Slack Off. Now that the game is a 2v1, all focus is on Slowbro, but thankfully none of the attacks are hitting all that hard. Slowbro shrugs off the damage and starts hitting Dragonite since it's slightly more threatening. After breaking Multiscale, we find that even a second Body Press is not enough, costing us precious PP and worrying me for the Corviknight endgame. To make matters a fair bit worse, Dragonite gets the Hurricane confusion before going down. At this point, Mistia concedes under the belief that she would lose this 1v1, but I was not so sure. Here's what I was worried about. I had 5 Body Presses left, while Mistia's Corviknight had 2 attacks, and a Roost, and Leftovers. If I didn't get a crit with one of those 5 Body Presses, then Corv would be guaranteed to win on Tomir thanks to its ability to heal. Unfortunately, Mistia didn't see that and she conceded when she had this out, but we take the win. Mistia changes up her leads to Charizard and Aerodactyl, and I keep mine the same. After both sides Mega Evolve out of the gate, we use Meowstic to set Light Screen so Slowbro can eat a Solar Beam. Sadly, we get flinched by Aerodactyl's Rock Slide and are unable to use Amnesia. With Slowbro no longer safe, we switch him out for Oranguru. Meowstic sets up Reflect, so Aerodactyl's Rock Slide doesn't hurt us too badly. As expected, Charizard Solar Beams into the Slowbro slot. We recall Meowstic instead of Ukulade, and surprisingly Mistia switches out Charizard for Corviknight on the same turn. Aerodactyl tickles Oranguru with a dual Wing Beat, and we get a Trick Room. We double it into Aerodactyl on the first turn of Trick Room, while Corviknight gets off an Iron Defense in between the attacks. I wasn't particularly expecting this to be an issue until Gyarados drops our attack with Intimidate. Oranguru instructs a Sacred Sword out of Gallade, but sadly Gyarados is chosen as the target. Corviknight goes for an Iron Defense as our other Sacred Sword lightly slaps them with a word. This time, the instructed Sacred Sword does hit Corviknight, but sadly Gallade is taken down by a Brave Bird. And of course, the recoil is not enough to KO. With Trick Room still up, I'm comfortable bringing Slowbro back out. Gyarados protects this turn with no consequence to us as we Amnesia twice using Instruct. Corviknight goes for a Roost, which doesn't make a difference in the long run. Sadly, an ill-timed critical hit takes down Oranguru after Trick Room expires. But Slowbro just barely manages to survive both Earthquake and Brave Bird in order to slack off. Meowstic comes back out and gets up a Reflect in order to keep Slowbro safe enough to get through this mess. Gyarados puts a chunk into Riverwood Waterfall, and Corviknight goes for another Iron Defense, leaving Slowbro perfectly safe to use Slack Off. Meowstic gets off one more safe Light Screen, and perishes to Earthquake from the dose. Alright, so the next million turns are very repetitive and just do a lot of jab, jab, heal, heal until the game finishes. So I've decided to speed up these turns for your sanity.
Okay. Are you afraid of God?
No. I'm afraid of you.
Oh yeah!
Overall, the flying team didn't cause too many problems. Slowbro was able to push through everything thrown at it, and even when Mistia switched things up to Charizard in Game 2 and threatened it with Solar Beam, our lovable shelved friend persevered. In the end, our biggest foe here was honestly RNG as per the champion's experience. With a handily earned victory to start our run, we move on to the next round. I was thrilled to see Mono Fire as my next opponent. Armrouge was on the team for this reason, and the only Pokemon on my opponent's team that he couldn't threaten was Incineroar, who was not particularly excited to be across from Gallade or Slowbro. I also felt Slowbro could excel here as long as the body press was not forced into Volcarona to cause a burn, since nothing else here threatened Slowbro all that hard. Even Throat Chop from Incineroar was negligible with the massive defense stat. Overall, this team didn't feel scared of me, so let's see how it actually went. My opponent leads Talonflame, Incineroar, Inchbar, Oranguru, and Armarouge. With Armarouge unable to do much to Incineroar here, I opt to switch in Slowbro, who takes heavy damage immediately from Acrobats and a Throat Chop. Thankfully, we safely get up Trick. So basically, Mio had a team sheet error that was called out to her during our game by a judge who was watching. Her team sheet said Darkest Lariat on Incineroar, and I kinda glossed over the throat shot that hit me being a team sheet error until Alicia pointed it out. Upon being told she had a game loss, Mio conceded game 1 and we proceeded straight to game 2. Slightly disappointed, as I still would have liked to see how it played out, and what she brought. After a very short first game, Mio shakes up her leads to a pair that heavily threatens Slowbro and Oranguru both with super effective damage. I Mega Evolve Slowbro, and naively think Oranguru will survive a double up in order to Trick Room, or that she will double up into Slowbro. Sadly, Oranguru falls without getting anything done. Gallade comes out next as it can threaten Incineroar and Volcarona somewhat safely, and because I want to keep Armarouge safe in the back. Volk goes for Rage Powder, but thankfully we went for Psycho Cut rather than Sacred Sword with Gallade. Slowbro takes a Throat Chop somewhat comfortably, and I go for Amnesia because I'm slightly more concerned with Volcarona than I am with Incineroar at this time. Sadly, Volcarona Bug buzzes Slowbro this turn, and though Gallade is faster than Incineroar, we chose to stick to Psycho Cut anticipating another Rage Powder. We're able to take out Volcarona, but then Incineroar cleans up Slowbro. Spicy Bro comes out to hopefully carry with Flash Fire. Mio's last Pokemon is Charizard, who Mega Evolves immediately and goes for a Dragon Claw into Gallade. Thankfully, we just barely survive and are able to take out Incineroar. Slightly foolishly, I go for Trick Room with Armarouge. Mio's last Pokemon turns out to be Torkoal, who threatens Gallade incredibly hard now. We successfully block one Eruption with Wide Guard while Armarouge puts a dent into Charizard. Dragon Claw deals over half to Armarouge, which puts us in a difficult position. Since Torkoal can't damage Armarouge, it goes for Weather Ball this turn as Charizard protects. Sadly, I did go for Expanding Force into Zard, as I could not afford to get this wrong and attack Torkoal. Torkoal demonstrates that it can't really damage Armarouge at this point, and we're able to take out Charizard with a third Expanding Force. Torkoal stalls out the game with a couple protects, but after that we go for the win using 2 armor cannons for some style points. Well, that was a strange round. It's not often in a tournament that I only play one proper game in a set. Game 2 was a little difficult to prepare for as I wasn't fully sure of Mio's game plan after our short Game 1, but she was able to deduce my plans and counter them. I expected to go to Game 3 after the rough start we had in Game 2, but ultimately Spicy Bro proved himself to be my GOAT yet again. Sadly, not much more to say about this match as it was so short, but regardless, with 2 wins under our belt, we move on to round 3. With no psychic resists except a sort of half dark type in the form of Protean Masquerada, Adriana's team looked ripe for Expanding Force to do its job. I was excited to finally be able to use my Gardevoir in a game because it's one of the fanciest Pokemon in my collection and never gets used for anything. Not to mention, Armarouge being a fire type, was quite happy to see a team full of grass types. Tailwind from Whimsicott did seem like an issue on paper, since my Gardevoir was not the slow, bulky kind that's common in the format, and I was unable to properly try to use it in Trick Room. I kept in mind 2 game plans, one for Gardevoir and one for Slowbro, and proceeded from there. We both lead with our respective cats and fairy types, which I found pretty funny, marking my Gardevoir's debut for the tournament. Gardevoir felt like dead weight in most of the tournament, but in this particular round I found that she did her job excellently. With both sides having a prankster Pokemon, the turn begins with a pair of status moves. My Meowstic sets Psychic Terrain so I can be true to my Psyspam roots, while Whimsicott goes for Tailwind. Meowscarada locks itself into Flower Trick, which makes sense given my ability to set Reflect with Meow Meow. Sadly, I wasn't positive she was going to use Flower Trick, so I didn't risk using Expanding Force here, even though it would have been great if I did. Cautious of more spread damage, Whimsicott protects while I go for Light Screen, as Reflect feels rather futile. Adriana's cat sadly takes out my cat, but our mood is brightened by finally getting to do Psyspam things in retaliation. Armarouge and Venusaur come out from both sides, and basic type chart knowledge makes me feel good about my position.
Venusaur!
Even after Venusaur Mega evolves, both of my opponent's attack are unable to nab a KO, and Radiance blasts through them with another Expanding Force. Adriana finishes the game with her superior, who really doesn't enjoy staring down Armor Cannon.
I'm a fire in my laser!
And with that, we wrap up the first game of the tournament to not give me a headache. I switched to Slowbro for Game 2 despite the grass weakness, as I felt Adriana had the tools to answer Psyspam and sticking with it would be too predictable. However, she sticks with Meowscarada and Whimsicott. We Mega Evolve Slowbro in order to gain Shell Armor and be a bit less scared of Flower Trick. After Protect from Whimsicott, we eat a Flower Trick as expected, and set up a relatively free Amnesia and Trick Room. We begin the Trick Room turns with this team's discovered specialty of a double setup using an Instruct. Adriana doubles into Slowbro, but thankfully Shell Armor keeps us entirely safe.
Nice signature move. Where do you get it? The signature move store.
After you have a good laugh at a Chatter's joke, Adriana switches out Meowscarada to bring in Leafeon, hoping it could put a bigger dent into Slowbro. Expecting the Protect, I take the opportunity to heal with Slowbro, and I go for Foul Play from Oranguru into Whims to break Sash just in case. But of course, I was right about Protect. Wanting to preserve Leafeon for after Trick Room, Adriana protects it here as I go for another double setup with Amnesia and Instruct. Realizing that Slowbro is going to be the harder threat to remove, my opponent starts putting damage into Oranguru to try and remove him first. On the last turn of Trick Room, Leafeon fails a second Protect, but I was taking the time to get in one more Iron Defense and to break Whimsicott's Focus Sash. Whimsicott goes for Tailwind on the expectation that knockoff from Leafeon would take out Dr. Banjo, but thankfully we live by a hair. Slowbro fails to KO Whimsicott with Body Press, but we safely get up a second Trick Room. Adriana opts to go for Sunny Day and hopes that a Solar Blade can take out the Bro, but thankfully we already went for Body Press into that slot and take out the BB first. Then Whimsicott soon follows its friend to the grave. Unsurprisingly, Venusaur was the last Pokemon.
Venusaur!
And without bringing in Gardevoir, it's not quite as easy to take out. Thankfully, 2 body presses end up being enough. Sadly, Meowscarada does get one final revenge kill on Oranguru, but on the bright side, it means Armarouge gets a tad more scream time. Slowbro goes for Slack Off, literally just because I want Armarouge to get a move in, and we finish the match with my favorite move. No other match in this tournament made me feel like as much of a Grim Reaper as I did playing against Mono Grass. I feel that in facing me, Adriana pulled her Nightmare matchup, as even my one Water type wasn't particularly scared of them due to the ability to massively boost his defenses. Adriana also notably had few ways to play through Trick Room with no Wide Guard, only one resist to Psychic, and no Protect on her Pokemon that was weak to Psychic. Going undefeated into the final round of Swiss, we march onwards. Going into round 4, I was completely and utterly terrified of Madeline's team. Being one of my best friends, she was excited for us to face off, but despite the popular saying, I was very afraid of some ghosts. You see, my only Pokemon that could withstand a barrage of strong super effective hits was probably my Mega Slowbro. The same Mega Slowbro that only had a fighting move for coverage. I had initially included a stored power Psycho Espathra on this team, and while it's not explicitly thought of for the ghost matchup, it would have really helped. Sadly, my loving sister Iris convinced me to cut it last minute. Thanks, Iris. Without many safe lines to form, I just cried and gave it my best shot. Maddie begins this loathsome matchup by leading with her 2 fastest Pokemon, making me regret my lack of Oranguru this game. After both sides Mega Evolve, I immediately set Light Screen and pray that Gardevoir can lift the double up. Unafraid of potential for Armarouge in the back, Typhlosion locks into Eruption, and Frostlass follows up with a Shadow Ball that Radiance just barely survives. Thankfully, Big Justice over there is quite frail and falls to Guardy's Shadow Ball. Aegislash comes out next, and of all the moves in its move pool, I was actually more just afraid of Shadow Sneak. So here's the thing, despite the rather advantageous seeming first turn, my Gardevoir was in an awkward spot where if I didn't get Trick Room up, it would go down easily to a hit from Frostlass. If I did get Trick Room up, everything else on the team would outspeed here. So my plan here was to protect Gardevoir and set up Psychic Change from Meowstic, so Aegislash couldn't use Shadow Sneak on Armarouge or Gallade. Then, on the next turn, Armarouge should have theoretically handled any double up while Gardevoir went down to give Gallade a free switch in on the turn Trick Room is set. With that explanation out of the way, let's continue. After protecting, we get Psychic Train up without issue, but things don't go as planned from here. Aegislash does go for an attack as predicted, but it was Shadow Sneak into Meowstic. Frostlass then goes for Aurora Veil, which means an expanding force from Gardevoir would have been incredibly free and valuable here. With the unexpected extra turn with Meowstic, we set Reflect as Blizzard takes out Gardevoir. Followed by... Okay, so I know the freeze didn't actually matter, but it's just one of those little moments that still makes you go, really? Our favorite Psyspam pair hit the scene, and we pray that not all is lost. Thankfully, Armarouge can take a Shadow Ball with Light Screen up, and Gallade outspeeds Aegislash and Oko's Frostlass thanks to our Scope Lens getting us a crit. Aegislash ends up using Psycho Cat on Armarouge, which Maddie told me later was due to timing out, allowing us to get Trick Room with no problems. Maddie sends out Basculegion as her last Pokemon, then opts to double protect and stall the first turn of Trick Room. Thankfully, I was wary of King's Shield and used Night Slash on Basculegion rather than Aegislash. Next, we discover that Aegislash is slower than even Armarouge, and it goes for an Iron Head into Gallade. Thankfully, it does just under half. Many Force deals around half to both opponents, but Basculetion's Citrus Berry keeps it out of range of another one. Astonishingly, Aurora Veil in tandem with lots of extra bulk is enough to keep Basculetion alive after a Night Slash, and then the Fishy sadly finishes off Gallade. With only Arm Rouge left and barely alive, a quick pair of priority moves finishes the game regardless of Trick Room being up. Maddie changes up her leads to Golurk and that fish that me and River hate. Golurk Mega Evolves immediately, and the game is off to a terrible start thanks to a Last Respects into Gallade. Being concerned with Golurk and Trick Room, I had also opted to instruct rather than Trick Room with Oranguru, and I'm immediately left in a rough spot. Gardevoir comes out, and I foolishly Hyper Voice instead of using Shadow Ball under the assumption that the weakened Golurk would go down. It survives, and Gardevoir and Oranguru both fall. Arm Rouge comes out, but is unable to do anything to give me momentum, and the game is concluded with a Wave Crash. Game 1 was significantly closer than I expected it to be. Ultimately, if the Night Slash into Basculetion gave me the 50% crit that Scope Lens provides, I would have won. So, it showed me that the matchup wasn't impossible, just really brutal. Maddie also got a huge advantage early on when she predicted my Gardevoir's Protect. Game 2, I decided to try leading Trick Room to take advantage of Maddie's speedy lead, but since the game was too close for her liking, she switched up as well, and my change of course brought me right into a wall. Eighth was running a very aggressive water team, and just like round 1, I was facing a Pelipper with Wide Guard and was unsure if I was comfortable trying to use Psyspam. However, there was a fish-shaped problem that goes by the name of Basculetion. Now, I'm not the biggest Basculetion hater, but in this particular instance, its ghost typing was particularly hindering to me. Body Press couldn't hit Basque, and Basculation threatened all of my Expanding Force sweepers extremely aggressively. Without an Ndidi with Follow Me to help get Trick Room up safely, I had to rely on Slowbro. Being unable to hit Basculation meant I needed to win through some sort of timer stall, PP stall, or very carefully finding an opening to use Night Slash of Gallade. But enough talking. You want to see how this weird matchup went, I'm sure. I led Meowstic and Slowbro, intending to just go full bulk right away. We both Mega Evolve, and we start with the Light Screen since Slowbro's natural physical bulk is higher. Despite the little damage, Starmie goes for Waterfall into Slowbro, hoping for a flinch while Primarina Calm Minds. Thankfully, we dodge the flinch and get our first stat boost. I swap Meowstic for Oranguru, as I feel it would be better to save our little kitty for later to set screens in the endgame. Thankfully, Oranguru comes in unscathed as 8th repeats both actions from the first turn. Luckily, we avoid a flinch yet again, and get off an Iron Defense, but pressure is starting to rise from the opposing side. Starmie takes a massive chunk out of Oranguru with Waterfall, but thankfully it seems Rain is necessary for the KO. Now boosted, Primarina takes a scary bite out of Slowbro with Moonblast, but we survive well enough to heal as Oranguru sets Trick Room. As much as I'd like to go for double setup here, I'm a little concerned about Starmie, so I go for one Amnesia and Foul Play into the Earthbound reference Mega. Thanks to the Amnesia, we take laughably little damage from the Singing Sea Lion, and Oranguru just barely survives another Waterfall. Anticipating an Aqua Jet from Starmie, I switch in Meowstic to take the hit, as 8th switches for Primarina to bring out Pelipper. Aquajet happens as predicted, and no KOs are taken, followed by Slowbro giving us the game's first KO on Starmie. Basculation is sent out to replace the fallen star, and we continue to bolster our defenses as best we can. However, after we groan about the confusion, Basculation takes out River and the game is technically tied. Gallade comes out, as using it in Trick Room is our only really hope of defeating Basculation cleanly. I expected Ace to see this, and played around the Protect by doubling into Pelipper, but of course, we get hit by Confusion. Sure, we get the Psycho Cut, we even get a crit, but sadly Pelipper has a Focus Sash. Even worse,
Oh my god!
Bask takes out Isabelle and I'm very stressed. This game would have been pretty much in the bag if I simply didn't roll the self-hit last turn, but we try to move on. Pelipper smacks Slowbro with Hurricane, and we get another Confusion hit. RNG is really not on my side at this point. Oranguru comes out ready to sadly go down next after Basculation puts another little dent into Slowbro. And then Primarina comes out, and while I'm not entirely dead, I'm not in an amazing position either. The rest of the game from here is kind of a repetitive grind of setup and healing on both sides, so we'll speed up this one a little bit like earlier. Yeah, RNG absolutely loathed me and wanted me dead this game. After game 1, Leisha points out to us that 8th also had team sheet error, and sadly would be given a game loss like my round 2 opponent. So that brings us to an even score and the tiebreaker game 3. After the Meowstic Slowbro lead wasn't really the best in game 1, I changed up the order of my Pokemon but mostly stuck to the same game plan. I was pretty convinced I lost game 1 mostly to the Hurricane confusion. 8th notably doesn't Mega Evolve her Starmie turn 1, which I believe was to avoid potentially higher damage from foul play. Sadly, we get flinched by the waterfall, but we do get Trick Room up without issue. 8th now Megas her Starmie and goes for the Aqua Jet into Oranguru, likely wary of a Body Press foul play double up and trying to get the damage in. We begin a setup war by going for a double Iron Defense with Instruct. And Primarina continues the Calm Minds that began on the first turn. Next, we jump into a double Body Press, with Primarina getting a Calm Mind in between. But at +4, it's not quite enough to 2-tap. Thankfully, Starmie bounces off of her defense boosts. On the next turn I anticipated that Primarina would protect, so I opted to use Instruct to nab 2 more boosts. this time to Slowbro's special defense in order to keep up with Primarina's calm minds. Starmie goes for another waterfall, this time into Oranguru, bringing him dangerously low on HP. Wanting Starmie's Aqua Jet to KO Oranguru, Ace switches out her heavily set up Primarina for Pelipper in order to ensure Oranguru goes down. Fair play. After Meowstic wasn't helpful in the lead game 1, we bring him out here for late game screen support now that Slowbro is already set up. Reflect was the right first choice, as it lets Meowstic just barely live Starmie's waterfall in the rain. Pelipper goes for a Hurricane, but this time we dodge the confusion and take out the Toilet Bird. Primarina comes back, and Meowstic uses his last breath to set up Light Screen. After Starmie puts another tiny dent into Slowbro, Primarina finishes off Meowstic with Hyper Voice. Slowbro avoids the waterfall flinch and gets the last Iron Defense off to be ready for Basculegion. Gallade comes out and immediately takes an Aqua Jet to the face, but then outspeeds Primarina and gets revenge for her fallen kitty. Slowbro makes a dent into Starmie, but this is mostly irrelevant as I intended to keep it alive once Basculegion came out. Starmie knocks out Gallade with another Aqua Jet, then we get our first taste of how little Last Respects is doing to Slowbro. After going for a well-timed slack-off, the fun begins. Okay, so, I wanted to pause here and kind of explain how the next bit of this game goes. I got asked during the stream by chat why I was leaving Starmie alive, for example. The answer is I wanted to keep the base power of Last Respects lower. I was taking less damage for Starmie plus 150 power Last Respects than I would have been taking from max power Last Respects on its own. Without being able to damage Basculegion, perhaps the game seemed unwinnable. My only hope was to stall out Last Respects, then KO Starmie. From here, I needed to get Basculegion to Wave Crash, followed by a properly timed slack off. If I was able to get the timer to run out while Slowbro has more HP remaining than Basculegion, we would get the win. So, let's see how it goes. It's also worth mentioning at this point that this is the only time I have ever needed to count a Pokemon's move usage while streaming.
You'll know that I am called the Count.
Well, that was a match. The way the second game ended was quite possibly one of the most brutal strangleholds I've ever put on an opponent in a VGC match. Ace jokingly told me in the tournament chat that I'm an evil person, and I don't necessarily disagree. It's just that winning this way was probably my only out into this matchup. I wasn't super happy to win this way, but I was even less happy to see who my opponent was in the finals. I had been racking my brain trying to figure out how I would beat Maddie if I faced her again. She was really excited that we were in the finals together. I was groaning at her spooky, scary ghosting. My same concerns from when we faced in Swiss were still on the table, and with how short our games were then, I hadn't quite had the time to come up with a consistent strategy into this yet. I gritted my teeth, decided what I would try next, and just jumped in. Maddie leads with Frostlass and Basque Legion, which already leaves me in a vulnerable spot. I was hoping she would reuse one of her leads from the first match. Basque Legion threatens Gardevoir immediately, so I opt to protect. Unfortunately, Frostlass goes for Aurora Veil when I was banking on the double up into Oranguru so I could take out Basque Legion with Foul Play. If I had seen this coming, I could have safely Shadow Balled the fish from Gardevoir. After Mega Evolving Gardevoir, we just barely survive a Shadow Ball from Frostlass, but Hyper Voice is not enough to take out Basque Legion, who then finishes off Oranguru. I was hoping for the first Hyper Voice to take out the fish, so instructed to a second one would take out Frostlass. Thankfully, Basque Legion is knocked out by the recoil, but I'm still in a pretty precarious spot with Gardevoir so low on HP and outsped by Frostlass. Spicy Bro comes out in hopes that he can handle Frostlass, but we see Maddie's Sinistcha for the first time. With Gardevoir in a miserable position, we switch her for Gallade. After Sinistcha predictably Rage Powders, we see a Blizzard from Frostlass, but feels fine until this. Honestly, after the RNG I've had this run, I don't even have words anymore. I Armor Cannoned the Teacup, hoping we'd take it out, but Aurora Veil is just barely enough to keep it alive. Our attempts to Wide Guard are of course thwarted by being frozen, but Wide Guard would not have helped because Frostlass takes out Armarouge with a Shadow Ball anyway. I could see from here just to move on to Game 2. Maddie leads Game 2 with the combination we're most prepared to see, and I'm hopeful I can turn this set around from here. Expecting Mousestick to get vaporized, I switch it for Armarouge in order to soak up an Eruption or Blizzard. Typhlosion does Eruption, and Armarouge takes nothing from it, even Oranguru kinda shrugs it off. Frostlass did go for Shadow Ball into Meowstic, however, and as a result puts a huge dent into Spicy Bro. Overall, a good first turn though, with no casualties, and Trick Room safely set up. Frostlass protects itself, and we set ourselves up with Psychic Terrain to block priority in the back and to bring Expanding Force online. However, I did expect Typhlosion to switch and not stay locked into Eruption, so we made the wrong choice here by using Armor Kit. Typhlosion gets off another Eruption, but this time it does very little damage. Maddie switches out Typhlosion this turn, and thankfully we opted to foul play that slot, so Basque Legion burns the Citrus Berry immediately upon switch in. And with Frostlass unable to protect this turn, we take it down with Armor Cannon. After Sinistcha comes in, I decided to switch out Oranguru to put myself in a better position to take out Basque Legion. Armarouge cleanly takes out Sinistcha before I can do anything, however Basque Legion goes for Wave Crash instead of the Protect I was expecting. We're left with Orin Guru and Delayed in front of Basculegion and Typhlosion, but thankfully Foul Play takes out Typho, and Night Slash takes out the fish. With a sigh of relief, we move on to Game 3. As I expected, Maddie returns to her Game 1 lead that left me helpless. I led with Dr. Banjo and River, and my plan here was to foul play Basculegion and hope to take it out after Wave Crash Recoil. Meowstic goes for a Reflect to keep Orin Guru slightly healthier, and Frostlass opens with a Blizzard. And... of course! My only hope now is the immediate Thaw.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
With Orin Guru unable to survive another double up, and not many other ways to fight around Basculegion, the game was effectively over at that moment. It was definitely a pretty anticlimactic way to end the run, but with how RNG heavy Regulation MA feels, this is just so expected it's almost funny. After how close a couple of the games were, and my win in Game 2 of Finals, the matchup didn't end up being as hopeless as I expected, but if I had run Espathra with Psych Up and Stored Power like I initially intended, I think I could have won this whole thing. I wanted to extend a hearty congratulations to Maddie, who despite telling me she was terrified of my team, beat me twice and went undefeated in the whole run. I wasn't overly prepared to beat Ghosts, but thankfully Maddie's team was the only Ghost type one in the tournament. In fact, we had a very diverse set of teams, with only one repeating type among 11 players. I don't usually have time to enter these kinds of fun tournaments, and I gotta say streaming this team was an absolute blast. Even if Slowbro was kind of not a blast for my opponents. If you're interested in playing a tournament like this, follow me on Twitter or join the Trickery Discord because I'll be hosting another one soon enough myself. Before I go, I'd also like to extend some thanks to Leisha for organizing and running the tournament, Maddie for lots of help with the script, and River for painstakingly reviewing my edits to make sure everything looked good. I've never taken on a video project like this, and it was a lot of fun to make, but definitely something I couldn't have done without the help of my friends. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Ruby out.